I think the photograph of the new conjugal couple becomes the visible symbol of this new set of social practices in which the husband and wife have been extracted out of the larger set of familial relations. So the joint family, which is normally the seat of how we would think of the household, from that you extract the couple, the husband and the wife, and what will then be their new conjugal household with their children. The marriage album is what is shared for days afterwards, and the marriage videos are now shared forever afterwards by families. So conjugality is to be celebrated, and it is to be frozen, to reflect a basic ethos in that family. So she's an archivist. Ramabai is an archivist, and my interest in her is partly coming out of the fact that I identify with her as an archivist, recording her time as it were. I'm Uma Chakravarti, and I taught history at Miranda House. I'm supposed to be a specialist in ancient Indian history. Because I was interested in the gender question, I actually roamed over the centuries and particularly got into the 19th century. I stumbled upon two old books in a godown in Gurgaon, and I came upon some books which had very interesting photographs, and I was struck by them. And it was clear that Ramabai was visually documenting her girls and her institution in an extraordinary way. Now, by this time, of course, I knew something around the way in which photograph has been used and the photographic practices have emerged. By the 1860s, suddenly there's a spate of photographs emerging, and in Ramabai's own archiving and in her own documentation, you find that she has an extraordinary photograph of her family when she's a 7-year-old. This family is extraordinary because they have not had a home. They are moving from one place to another. Through this photograph has travelled with her wherever she's gone. It's clearly a prized possession, and it is the family that she completely loses. Every single member of her family is dead, and all she has is that photograph. She's quite extraordinary if we look at it from the point of view of conventional marriage norms, because she makes a intercaste marriage, and she comes back to Pune from Sylhet, where she hopes to then be part of the reformers program of action. She begins to access reformist ideas, and finally she decides to go to England to train to be a doctor, because one of the things that women should be doing at that time, reformist women should be doing at that time, is to study medicine, because that way you will be able to come back and help your women. But while she's on her travels, she also begins to develop great interest in creating an institution for widows, because they are oppressed and because they are stigmatized and because they are treated as cast-off dregs of society. And so this institution that she wants to create is to be the home for such cast-offs in society, and that's what she tries to do by creating Sharda Sadan. Her understanding of the widow was she needed to have a life of dignity and autonomy from the forces that were exploiting her and also stigmatizing her. While the men focused entirely on the young widow being remarried, and they had an obsession with the young widow being remarried. This happened from between 1856 and the 1880s. There was something like 300 men who had married across the country. That's all. So the number, so it was something of a joke, that reformist project of men marrying young widows was a no-starter. And Ramabai herself was quite dismissive of that mode of salvation for the widows. She never took a direct position, and many of her girls did also get married. But that was not the focus. The conjugality and the husband and wife duo framed kind of existence, that's not Ramabai's interest in the widow. The institution she set up then actually trained women to fully reproduce themselves as institutionally, because she had all these incredible, plans and plans which she executed. The widows doing a range of things, from printing press to whatever. In a sense, living a fulfilled life outside of conjugality, as she was leading herself. Let's say she was a standing example of someone who, stood that life. She practiced that existence in which you could create other kinds of emotional bonds. What are families about, and what is ultimately conjugality about? It is about creating a new family. It's about also reproducing the family. So social reproduction and reproduction is at the heart of the conjugality project. And so the couple photograph was clearly one of the first things that was domesticated within photography in the context of women. At that time, Ramabai creates these extraordinary images of other kinds of couples. There are so many photographs of Ramabai with her daughter. Every occasion that she can, and you can clearly see that the child is dressed for that. It's in a studio, it is recording a relationship. Clearly, Ramabai has an understanding of the camera and of assembling an image for the camera, because the photographs that we have of her, and there are really a range of them, shows some skill and some inversion perhaps of the manner in which photographs are being taken at that stage. So she often has two women. She rarely has a photograph of a single woman by herself in a studio. They're positioned actually like a husband-wife photograph in terms of the placement of the characters. So one will sit below, one will sit at an elevation, or one will sit and the other one will stand. And the hand will be placed on the shoulder. It's really the same positions that the conjugality photographs or the family photographs are using, now used in the context of two women or three women. And so that's one of the interesting uses of the camera to capture the people whom she wants documented. And you see just young women, irrepressible, happy young women as they are. And they are widows, but they are obviously they are widows in her institution, so they are dressed like any other girl might be dressed. It's a representation of the family, redefining the family, but they are all seated and there is a dog at the bottom. So it's actually assembled like a family photograph. It's crafting an image with some eye, with an eye to making some kind of a statement. The camera captures that, and she captures what the institution and she has been able to achieve for these girls. In the same spirit, I think it's important for us to also see this marvelous image that she constructs of a family. It's like a family. Manorama is there, Ramabai is there. There's a group of children around her of all ages, starting off from literally babies to older ones. There's a standard place which she likes to use, show you a set of people on different elevation. They're seated on a short flight of steps. And the photograph is quite amazing because it's both realistic as well as it is studied perhaps in some ways. There are children, one of them nestles literally into Ramabai's side. One of them got her head on her lap and Ramabai has a baby seated in it. And the next image that we have from that family photograph is a very rare photograph that most people will not have not even seen. It's something that's been recovered from the institution, Mukti Southern, by archivists today. It's a photograph of Ramabai seated in a classic, studied, posed manner in which men are representing themselves, There's a table, there's a chair, there's books on the table, and there is Ramabai resting her head on an elbow with another book in her hand. So the entire image is one of this learned woman. By the way, she is called Pandita Ramabai Sarasvati. When you're wanting to revive the educational agenda in the 19th century for the women, it's important that you actually can frame it in this way. The feminist rewriting of history project has been sort of unfolding before us for some years now, at least for 20-30 years, and a lot of hidden history has come out. What hasn't, I think, been done is to link the histories with the emergence of the documenting of women, physical, actual documenting of women's lives through the photograph. And so I think what is interesting in what Ramabai tries to do is that she gives us a visual account of the things that she's seeking to achieve, the intervention she's making, and the life she's trying to give to the women who become part of her family and her institution, to give them a dignified, autonomous life for themselves. And she deploys the photograph marvelously from that point of view to actually let us see what she and others have tried to write about, achieve through the written word. Here, there is a visual documentation of that very phenomenon. So I think that's where Ramabai leaves an imprint on history in an extraordinary way, which I don't think anyone else did.